Hi class, today we're going to be talking about the second wave of modernism and postmodernism that went from 1945 up until the present. In the 1930s, the US went from being one of the poorest nations to one of the richest after World War II. We were on top, we were becoming quite a cultural force in the Western world, and by mid-century, American culture was largely defined by conformity. Think cookie cutter everything. McCarthyism, the idealization of the nuclear family, tract housing, and the artists reacted to this sense of overwhelming conformity. They thought that the imagination had disappeared. Everyone and everything was the same. A second wave of modernism was becoming a force in the 1950s, even though postmodernism was starting to take hold. We saw a major shift from the high modernism of Eliot's Wasteland, and we're looking at explorations of multiple and many truths. We're looking at different notions of time. The journey was becoming more important than the goal, so that affirmed growth and learning. We began to ask, what does language mean? The beat poets rejected Eliot and they turned to confessional poetry that was representative of the self and the individual voice. Poetry was starting to quote-unquote make sense. Modernism lost its grip on the American consciousness by the 1960s. It might help to think of postmodernism as a movement born out of the second wave of modernism that got its start after World War II. But postmodernism really started to take hold during the height of the civil rights movement. During this time frame, from the end of World War II up until now, leaps in science have greatly affected and challenged the ways in which we view the world. Artists explored the link between humanities and scientific thought. And we started to think of, for example, the influence of Einstein's theory of relativity. Can physics replace religion? We're asking for new ways to view the world since the old ways have fallen apart. And science is based on uncertainty. From FDR up until now, through a book of Barack Obama, we are living in a world of change and uncertainty. We can find meaning in individual acts of affirmation and embrace the absurdity and the uncertainty of the world. We can take that leap of faith. We should make connections with other human beings instead of abstractions such as faceless corporations or even an abstraction such as a god. We've got this individualism versus community. During the 1950s and 60s, the individual is, again, celebrated, recognized. Before we had a repression of the individual, and now freedom becomes a problem. We have to struggle with making decisions for oneself. With choices comes personal responsibility. And another thing is our identities become created after all other identities have been tried and rejected. So think multiple careers, changes in ethnicities or a recognition of multiple ethnicities. The color line is also the dominant issue of the 20th century. Feminist writing again starts to take the stage again. Women need myths that affirm female power. And again, women are starting to rewrite the fairy tales that they grew up with. So the era here was characterized and influenced by existentialism. Existentialists believe that the only way to deal with modern world is to reject it. You've got nonconformity, so think individually, artistically, politically. The celebration of individuality, the celebration of multiplicity. We've got self-referential culture, which is a circular process that affirms life and death and is finally good. I hope you enjoy this unit, and I will see you later.